Okay, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, David and Jonathan, for joining us. Today we are going to discuss flight risk and how we can predict or find out and get the signals. And we all know, like people, when they turn in their resignation, it's not happening overnight. It's a series of events that happen that led that person into that decision, and also into accepting a LinkedIn message from a recruiter or getting pushed or even start looking. So we are going to discuss what are those signals, how we can avoid them, and then how HR can help, and also how we can train managers and help managers doing that. And of course, we are in 2026. We are going to even discuss how we can use AI to do that. So before we start, I want to ask David and Jonathan introduce themselves a little bit quick.
David, would you like to go first?
Sure, I will jump in. I'm David Gaspin. I'm a New York-based HR people and culture leader. I've been working in this field for over 20 years. Most of my work has been, at least over the last 12, 15 years or so, most of my work has been supporting growth stage tech and tech adjacent companies as they're scaling and building out their operations. So that'll be my lens as I'm going through this is going to be a lot of the smaller to mid-size scaling businesses. And I'm just, yeah, happy to be here having this conversation today.
Fantastic. Well, I'm Jonathan Harvey, Los Angeles based. I've spent the better part of 20 years working in HR with a lens from the business side of the operation, mostly across retail, consumer packaged goods, and e commerce enterprises, ranging anywhere from a couple of hundred employees up to almost 40,000 employees at one point in my career. So I have the lens of what it's like to work with large hourly workforces across retail formats and distribution centers, as well as supporting corporate locations and global operations across up to about 23 different countries.
Thank you, Jonathan. And that's great that we have a great spectrum of lenses from different aspects, with David coming from technology and technology adjustments and smaller to mid-sized startups, and Jonathan with the larger organizations. And I'm Ali Reza Baluchi. At this point, I'm the CEO at Catch Up AI, which is we are building an autonomous managers that help managers to predict retention and also help them figure out how to manage that and reach out to employees and also boosting the productivities. Uh, at the same time, I'm teaching at Oklahoma State University as an adjunct professor. I'm teaching software engineering. Before this, I worked at companies like Visa, KLA, and then I was a VP of Center of Excellence in AI at Age of Learning, which was about like 1,000 people. And my main job has been helping an organization to set up for success, how to flatten, how to train the managers and train so many managers over this time. So let's go ahead and start with the first question from both of you, and whoever wants to go first. How have you seen the retention today? How do you see it today? And how has it been changing over the last 5 years with AI and many other things in job market, with COVID hitting and then a lot of layoffs happening afterward? Where do you see the retention right now?
I'll jump in on this. I mean, I think over the last 5 years specifically, the biggest thing that's impacted retention, in my view, has been the job market itself. Right now, we're in a place where there are, companies are laying people off. The job search is a longer, harder process over these past few years than it has been in quite some time. And so I think that's a double-edged sword from a retention standpoint. Are people staying in roles longer? Yes, when they can. Are they staying even past the point where in other circumstances, in other job markets, they would be gone? Also, yes. And so I think where that hits us is less opportunity to kind of catch these things earlier because people are just coasting along. But also, when someone has the opportunity to walk out the door, I think they're more likely to do it right now versus even giving you a chance because in their minds, they've been trying to get out that door already for quite some time.
I think that's a really good observation. I would almost reframe it in part to the points of friction that lead to turnover or retention have magnified extensively, right? We went through the COVID pandemic. Everybody got used to this work from home thing. We got the luxury of being far more flexible with our time and what and when we were working, how we chose to engage. Companies have obviously clawed back to a large extent with return to office mandates to varying degrees. And those points of friction have increased, right? So even if people are having to stay longer, those points of friction remind them every day that this isn't the long term fit or the long term place for me. And one of the big things I think from an HR perspective is how do we tackle points of friction for employees the same way that marketing tackles points of friction for customers, right? And maintaining that customer journey.
Those are really great points. And of course, that happened, that affected how employees are actually being treated and like making those their decisions. But one thing that I've seen is although the layoffs are happening, a lot of people are like, in a state of mind that, hey, what should I do next? At the same time, the top talent I'm seeing becoming more and more linchpin for companies. The gap that I've seen in performance, like people who are top performers now performing 10x, the low performers perform maybe 1.5x. So the gap is becoming more for companies want to retain their top talents even more than before. So that thirst for understanding those signals and figure out what to do for stopping retention is more because if you're a top talent, everyone is looking for you. And if you're falling behind, then you need to skill up and do something about it. So that leads me to the next question, Jonathan. Over these span of these many years, how often were you like when someone turned in their resignation, you felt like, oh, I knew this, or we should have got this. I kind of got surprised on it. And then what do you think? What were the signs that you think were missed?
Yeah, I would say very infrequently have I been surprised by a departure,
Hmm.
right? When that hiring manager says, "Hey, someone on my team just left," I'm like, "Okay, we've known about this. We've had that conversation. Like we figured they were a risk." If I had to quantify it, I'd say probably one out of every 10 may have surprised me. And if I think about retail populations, I would say I'm never surprised by turnover on the front line in a retail store. It's just a factor of life. Um, but I think it's how you start to diagnose what those resignations or why people are leaving. And I referenced that point of friction, kind of my opening remark, that so many of the early signs tie back to friction in the environment, right? Friction with the hiring manager, friction with the processes of the company, cognitive dissonance, our actions don't match our words, don't match our values. They create really early indicators that hiring managers or staff and line managers should be aware of and that HR should be thinking about on the back end, right? How do we reduce these points of friction? How do we make the work environment easier for folks, especially those people that we consider top talent or that may be producing, a oversized portion of our revenue or output or product.
Great point. And it was interesting. You mentioned so many times the hiring managers, the people on the ground, and we are going to get to this, but like essentially it's not the HR leaders that need to find out. It's essentially like management and people like who are supervising should be trained to help with that as well, right?
Absolutely. Look, I think if hiring managers deferring their relationship to HR to manage and engage and know the people on the team, you've already lost that hiring manager and you've got a bigger problem on your hands than you recognize, right? Hiring managers are the front line. And it's been said many times in many different ways, but at the end of the day, we work for people. A
Mhm.
manager in your relationship with your direct boss has a greater impact on whether or not I retain you, how engaged you are, and what your overall performance looks like than anything HR is going to do, whether they're 2 offices away or in some cases 1,000 miles away.
Hmm. Very great points. And David, from your point of view, in technology and technology adjacent companies, what do you think? What's those signs that we can actually find out earlier? Are there any that you found over these years?
Yeah, I think the signs are there. And there are two main issues that I think keep us from seeing them a lot, right? One is managers just don't know what to be looking for, right? We like to throw around this whole idea of engagement, right? Employee engagement, that's the goal. That's what we want. And better the engagement, the less likely it is that people are gonna leave. But engagement is an attitude, basically, right? It's a feeling, and you can't manage to attitudes and feelings. What you can manage for and manage to are behaviors. So when we look at signs like, is somebody showing up a little bit more quietly in the team meetings? Is someone who used to be an above and beyond person now just doing the things they're being asked to do? Is someone not as consistently showing up to the all hands or the happy hour or whatever it is? Um, you know, I think a big one that we don't pay enough attention to is, did somebody stop complaining?
Hmm.
Because when they've stopped complaining, they've stopped trying to make it better. And that's a sign, right? But managers aren't necessarily thinking about this stuff. They're not looking for it. And I think what compounds that even more is the second piece, which is because there is still, because there's so much remote work, you have to be that much more intentional about looking for things and proactively kind of tracking these behaviors and the changes. And a lot of times, uh, when we're all working remotely in a dispersed environment, your interactions are with purpose. It's, hey, we need to have a conversation about this thing, this project, this whatever. And so there's less opportunity to just kind of notice these things. And so it's just that much harder and that much more incumbent on, again, to echo Jonathan, and we'll agree on this, I think, all day long. It's like on managers to know what to look for, understand what the signs are. And yeah, HR is here to help you understand that and help you learn that and help you know what to look for. But at the end of the day, it's a new piece of the job or a new wrinkle to an old piece of the job for a manager to be looking for these things.
Yeah, and those are very interesting point because often we see like managers are the best individual contributors that got promoted to be a manager. So they usually do a lot of work at the same time of managing. And one thing that is being missed, all these things that you said, David, are important. One piece is training them to do it. Another piece is we need to give them time to actually do it. Like, and then if they are attending an all hands, either they should listen to that all hand themselves as an employee, or they should check if people are attending or paying attention. The same with happy hours and everything. And it's a very thin line on micromanaging and being aware of the situation. So those are great challenges. So my follow-up question is, how have you been when you've been in training managers, like HR always bring this like consulting companies or put together some trainings for these managers. How do you teach that to the managers so that they don't start micromanaging people, but at the same time they stay aware of like everything that is happening?
I'd say one of the things that I'd want to kind of address before even jumping into that question is something you said about our managers are often great individual contributors that have been promoted. I
Mhm.
think that may be one of the biggest fallacies to address at the very beginning is that just because somebody was a great performer as an individual contributor does not mean they're going to be a great manager of others or capable of making that transition regardless of how much training you invest or how much you develop them to do that, right? It's a different skill set, it's a different persona that needs to step up in order to truly lead people and not just manage them. And I think that's maybe the disconnect. If you try to manage, your propensity is going to be to micromanage because you're trying to control outputs. You're trying to control how somebody works, what they work on, what they produce at the end of the day versus empowering them, giving them feedback, letting them make mistakes and learn from those mistakes in a safe and supported way, helping to coach and guide, developing real relationships that help you understand, hey, what are the things and factors that this person may be experiencing outside of the job that may impact the workplace? And what are those points of friction in the workplace that are causing them to underperform or not deliver in the way that you're expecting, right? Are there things that are actually hindering their ability that you as a leader need to step in and get out of the way, right? I think we've all spent lots of money on consultants and learning programs and off the shelf stuff or tried to develop our own management tools. But the biggest lesson I think we've got to teach any manager that wants to be a true leader is how do you build genuine relationships with your direct reports that help people be effective, that empower them for success, that provide them with great coaching and feedback. It's beyond just, hey, did they get the job done? And can you write a performance appraisal a couple of times a year?
Yeah, and I feel like I need to jump onto that for a minute. Because the you can train a manager to be a better manager. You can give them tactics, you can give them techniques, you can give them tools. What's very difficult to train for or to teach is curiosity and care, right? Which at the end of the day, I think are the two things that we should be looking for when we're looking at promoting managers. Um, because you can have all of the reactive responses to even seeing some of these potential early warning signs. Oh, well, now let's have a conversation. And now, let's have a stay conversation or let's talk about what's going on. Are you happy here? But when it feels like it's coming as a reaction, it loses 70% of the impact, right? As opposed to let's look way back before 90 days. Let's look from day one and create this cadence of conversation, of interaction, of relationship. I ask managers a lot, so when was the last time that you had a conversation with one of your direct reports whose sole purpose was about their career and development? And as I'm sure Jonathan can attest to, like the answer to that question usually is, ooh, I can't remember having that conversation. And so, these are the things that help to even form those baselines so that when these behaviors start to shift and change, you can be aware.
Yep, those are very great points. And one thing I've done back to what you said, Jonathan, about like promoting the best like individual contributors was that when I was working with companies, I was pushing for, and I know a lot of bigger companies have already done it, the path to becoming a manager and a great architect or individual contributor should not like even you should need to pay those individual contributor a little bit more because there's this con per perception that managers are a more prestigious role. They have like they get better pays, they are higher ranks and all that, which we should break. It's a job, it needs the talent. Like usually often managers need to read the room really great. Like they go to a room when they give feedback, when they are in meetings, they should be able to read the room. And in individual contributors, especially like in tech, that's not always the best skill sets of an individual contributor. There are people who are really great at, but not always like the best talents they have, the base skill. Like their skill is doing what they do in their technical mastery, great. So either we need to bring a lot of training to them, or we need to find out individuals who are really good and provide the right support. So that will get me to the next part. So now these days, managers are expected to do all these things, and David and Jonathan, both of you mentioned coaching, performance management, doing technical work. What have you seen that has changed? Of course, like AI is helping in many different aspects, but what are the things that you started seeing, like from the tools from early days? Like, of course, like there are many tools that are doing performance management, or they are like helping like once a year doing annual review is much better than never doing it, right? But it's not enough. So we need to go through a process. If we are a new company, we need to set up those processes. But what are the things that you've seen over the last 10 years with the change of technology that came in and started helping people more?
I think specifically when you talk about technology, there's been a lot of support. I think I'll preface that by saying, to me, the biggest change over the last, let's say, 10 years is just more prevalence of even just awareness and interest in more of a culture of continuous feedback. So it's not just that once a year. It's let's create patterns, create cadences where we're having these conversations more often. It's still not everything, but it's more than your once a year required conversation about how things are going. And so I think that with that growth, we've seen a lot of technologies pop up to support that, starting with some of the bigger platforms that are doing performance management software that used to just be doing performance reviews that have added in things like one-on-one tools and templates and trackers. And now you've seen that continue to evolve with newer technology, specifically bringing in different, AI powered capabilities that are able to take that a step further and say, here's all your one-on-ones that, yes, we helped you plan for and helped you create the, talking points and the outputs and all of those things. But now we also have the ability to synthesize this for you and say, here's the culmination of the last 3 months of stuff with conversations with your employee, whether that's your one-on-ones, whether that's team meetings. There's still friction about, I think, how much people are willing to let these tools into the rest of their communication ecosystem. But the ability is there, right? I think the technology and the tools are getting to a point where they can make life a lot easier. It's just, now it's answering the should we do this question, not the can we do this question around using some of those tools to really help make it a lot easier on managers.
I think it's almost a burden in and of itself, right? The advent of technology and all these new tools and resources, and you go right up to the point before AI kind of hits in a massive way. It was essentially creating extra work for managers and extra work for their employees, because now suddenly you're having to document and enter information for one-on-ones and performance appraisals, and oh, there's an engagement survey, and then suddenly we want to do engagement surveys every 60 days and do pulse checks, and then we've got emails that go out and town hall meetings, and it's overload of the things that we ask for from managers. And if that manager is overloaded, going, wait a minute, you want me to do all these things and actually have a genuine conversation with somebody? And then the employee is going, wait a minute, you want me to do all of this prep work and justify my performance and document my one-on-one and respond to these surveys, but you actually want me to produce work at the end of the day? It's how do we find that balance? How do we find a point of equilibrium where the manager feels effective, the employee feels valued and listened to and is putting forward their best work, and the organization's getting what it needs, right? Because a big part of these tools has allowed us to consume data and understand practices and consistency and impact. But we have to find the right balance, right? A tool is a great tool, but if we don't teach people how to use it effectively, if it doesn't bring value to the process or the conversation or the outcome that we're looking for. And if it's not, at the end of the day, enabling the organization to move faster, be more agile, be more responsive, and create a better employee experience, it's a tool that's actually causing more harm than good.
Those are both really great point. Like one thing is the consistency, constantly getting those data and like checking the frequency, and then over time rather than overnight. And then the one of the tools like for annual reviews, they capture it overnight. And David, you mentioning that there are tools that get those signals, accumulate them, help you see the trends. That's very important. And I think, Jonathan, the thing that you mentioned, that tools are good, but they if we overwhelm people with them and just use for the sake of having more tools in, those are going to hurt us more, because a lot of times I've seen doing a lot of surveys and then nobody acts on them. And as soon as you don't act on them, people start like not using them anymore. And another side of it, I've seen people abusing them, like going to those surveys, trying to figure out who said that bad thing. And that actually hurts the company more and the trust more. So, like a lot of things about using the tools is very important to actually look at. And then now we are getting to another question leading to that. What have been a signal or two that you can mention? And I think like, Jonathan and David, you can come from different industries and saying that because it's a little bit different. Like for something in tech, you can look at like GitHub, you can look at Jira tickets and all that. And when you come to retail, it might be a little bit different, like, work shifts, people attending their time, they submit their time attendance, all those things, and then maybe peer reviews, all those. So can you mention one or two signals that you've seen you could have got from these tools if they were used right? The signals that you could have gathered that you would show that manager without HR getting involved. Hey, this individual might be leaving in 90 days. So I will start with you, Jonathan. If you can mention one or two, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest signals, and it is nothing new, it's been around for my entire career, is time and attendance and looking at it in both directions, right? From a retail standpoint, employees that show up to their shifts on time, work the full shifts, those that tend to pick up additional shifts or coverage give you a good indicator of like, hey, they're engaged, they're wanting to work, they're wanting to be there. Whereas those that are giving up shifts frequently, or that are changing their availability frequently, or that are calling out using their benefit while we want them to do that, those are all signals of like, hey, maybe there's disengagement or something else wrong. On the corporate side, right, a lot of companies have moved to flexible PTO, since we don't want to call it unlimited PTO anymore. But how people choose to use that benefit, right? If it's truly flexible or unlimited, are people taking a couple of weeks off a year? Are they actually using the benefit, or are they foregoing the use because they think organizationally they can't, right? That's a point of friction, and really understanding what the use case is and allowing people to do that. Or if you have a banked organization, those employees that aren't using it and are banking all that time, well, if you work in a state like California where you get paid out for that, they're banking it because that's their bridge. That's their coverage between leaving this opportunity and starting the next one, or covering bills for a period of time, right? They're hedging for, hey, unemployment's only going to give me a couple $100 a week. That helps me if I leave or I make the decision I just can't stay here any longer. So really understanding what your time and attendance patterns are. Do people feel that they can take time off to rest and recharge? Are they hedging their bets? Has their pattern changed in the last year where, hey, they've been with you 3 or 4 years, they always used to take the week around 4th of July off or the week between Christmas and New Year's, and suddenly they're not doing that anymore. There could be a family change or something behind that, but those are also signals that you can go, hey, I used to see you always took this week off. Is anything going on or something changed? Or are you going to take some time off later this summer? It's a good point to have a conversation if you've built that relationship to test that signal, right? To explore that a little bit more. I'd say the other thing, and it's less of a systemic signal, But I think one of the things we overlook frequently and hiring managers aren't always aware of because they're not in the salary negotiation, it's that point where you close a candidate and you negotiate a salary, right? Pay transparency has helped set expectations, both good and bad, for minimum and maximum pay amounts. But if a candidate says, hey, I'm open to a range, if you offer them the lowest point in their range, yes, they will probably say yes to the job. But it's a signal that they're actually wanting more and they think they are worth more than that. So the likelihood of them continuing to look or to be open to a conversation, especially in the short term, is very high.
Mhm.
Whereas if you offer them at the upper end of that and the hiring manager knows that's a chance for early retention, right? They feel better about the opportunity. You've recognized their value. You've given them a reason to continuing to say yes to you as an employer and really commit and buy into that team. And I think it's a signal that hiring managers miss, recruiters are vastly aware of. And hey, I can tell you from my own experience, my recruiters were gold on delivering candidates under the maximum of a range that we stated, but they weren't expected to bring them in at the lowest dollar because we knew that was a risk.
Mhm. Those are really great points and very interesting. There are a lot of similarities with tech, but at the same time, there are meaningful differences as well. So I want to ask David, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, two sides of the same coin, right? Because what we're talking about is variances. We're talking about this is what a person has always done. This is the baseline they've set. Things are different now, right? And so that's the theme that we're talking about. Now, with tech, that can show up differently, right? If it's a software developer, that can show up on, if they're coding, it's quantity of code, it's quality of code, are they putting the thought into it to make sure this is going to go through the first time and isn't going to be kicked back with a bunch of bugs that come out in QA, right? Are they actually putting in the thought to get this right? Um, Timeliness, right? Like, is this somebody who was just like plowing through Jira tickets and now they're doing okay? Those are just those because those don't signal changes in competency or in ability, right? That's changes in desire, in feeling cared for, and feeling like they want to do more. Um, and so I think again, these things show up. And the difference is, I think that in tech, for a lot of these things that I'm talking about, we already have and have had for years the tools in place to track these changes. Then it's okay, what are we doing with that? What other tools do we feel comfortable introducing that can take some of the heavy lifting off in terms of analyzing and identifying some of those behavior shifts? And then, yeah, like at what point does it become we're all just being monitored by the robots versus this is a tool that helps our managers help our teams be more successful and thrive.
Uh, a very great points, especially like in the tools. Like there are many tools that have been doing that. One thing that was missing that they were treating everyone the same way. So one thing I've seen over time, even the top talents, especially because to me, in many other companies, like you have a range of talents. You want to help with the skill sets of the mid performers. You want to help the low performers, but you're very focused on your top performers. You want them to constantly get better and get every support they can to move forward. And those are the people burned out much faster and a lot of time very quietly. So that pattern that David you mentioned, that seeing that pattern of the person have been doing really great and now not doing, I know a lot of these great talents, they don't even tell their managers. They don't even set up one-on-ones because they tend to like your manager say, hey, this person is good. I don't need to even have to talk to them. And they miss out when they start looking. So that's the piece that we need to be very aware of. And the shift thing that you mentioned, Jonathan, like in retail, and that's a different Very interesting difference between software. I've been in software for the longest part of my life. And then I've been looking at retail and some other forms, like, hospital networks, like nurses. Very interesting differences where, like in software, it's very easy to get away with not doing work. And we've seen a lot of that throughout the COVID. And the signals require you to do like very long period, making sure you do your due diligence and don't micromanage. And other industries have their own challenges as well, but you need to look at them differently. The salary. And one thing is, I think, Jonathan, you mentioned it. Those are signals, but you can do something about it. People often don't leave the job because of they have lower pay. They leave that job because they didn't get the support they need. They didn't get better in what they do. Their skill set is not improving. A lot of those factors are very, like, when I was at a previous company, I was helping them. I was saying, if your people are leaving for a higher ranking job, a better job, you're doing good. That's going to build up a culture that I need to join this company because that's going to get me a better job afterward. If they are leaving you for the same pay, just a little bit more pay, the same ranking job, then you're doing something wrong. So those are great points. Thank you, everyone. So we are about to be ending the session. The last advice, Jonathan, David, you have for managers, how to capture these signals. What do you think is like one thing that you want to tell them? Hey, this is my advice for you with these amount of experience that you have. What would that be?
It all comes back to the relationship, right? Building a genuine, authentic relationship with your direct reports. Doesn't mean you need to be their best friend, doesn't mean you need to go to drinks after work every day, but showing genuine care and concern, demonstrating empathy when it's required, really understanding why somebody is working for you and for the company, right? What is their true motivation? Is it money? Is it better opportunity in the long run? Is it developmental? Is it they're really engrossed in the mission or vision of where the organization is headed? Is key to helping build that relationship, building that rapport, and understanding those early signals, right? David said it early in our discussion that there is a spectrum that people move through in terms of how they choose to engage. Someone that starts off really energetic and happy to be there is going to have questions. They're going to make requests. They're going to want to understand why a decision's been made or really dig into your thinking. And if you don't respond in kind, that relationship's going to shift. It's going to stop being questions and requests. It's going to get to frustration. It's going to get to silence. It's going to get to disengagement, right? Which is even worse. They do the bare minimum, but they're no longer giving you discretionary effort. They're no longer trying to achieve great results. They're just getting the job done at the end of the day. Or in the worst case, they're going to flat out go to a stage of rebellion, right? And I think David said it also that in the current job market, if people are disengaged, if they would otherwise be looking for a job, they're staying put today. And the fact that they're staying put is a sign of rebellion because they're no longer working towards the broader benefit. They're no longer giving you that discretionary effort. Yeah, they may be showing up, maybe signing on, but COVID also taught us there's a lot of great devices out there to move your mouse and hit the keyboard every once in a while. People will start to look for escape hatches and ways to disengage, but disengage in a way that is actually harmful to the rest of the team and organization. So start with the relationship, build that relationship, build that rapport, have a regular conversation. Doesn't need to be a structured one-on-one, doesn't need to be the ongoing developmental conversation. It just has to be a genuine, heartfelt, dialogue. And even if you don't know what the right thing to say in these conversations, I think Brene Brown said it best. Like, to be clear is to be kind. To just tell somebody what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're personally experiencing is a chance to be kind and demonstrate that empathy and build that relationship. Sometimes the words are less important. Now, as an HR person, I'm going to tell you the words can be very important if you say the wrong thing or in the wrong way. But not having the conversation is always going to be worse than at least saying something.
Exactly. And I want to follow up on that. A kudos could go a very long way. Often managers just forget about, just acknowledge you did a good job in this specific thing, like a couple of hours after that happened. Not don't wait until next one. Just give that feedback, I think would build up that rapport and that conversation to a great extent. So yeah, thank you, Jonathan. David?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to find anything that Jonathan didn't already say. First of all, plus one to everything he just said, because I think that's it, right? If I was gonna think of one takeaway for managers or one piece of advice, I think it's start treating every day from day one of a new hire's time on your team. Start treating that like your job is to understand why they're there, what would make them leave, and to do everything you can to make them comfortable making the decision every day when they wake up. I want to go back to work here today because that is the job. And that comes through, like I said, understanding motivations, understanding growth trajectories, understanding how somebody wants to be rewarded, understanding what makes them want to give that discretionary effort, what makes them want to go above and beyond, what's going to motivate them. And then doesn't mean it's your job to give them everything they want or to bend over backwards for every whim, but it is your job to know what you're meeting and what you're not meeting, or what the organization is meeting and what it's not, because it's not always down to the individual manager's discretion. Um, and that's information that you can use to figure out where things are, to make those predictions, to make those calls and say, hey, I know that we may not be meeting this person's needs in this way. Let me see if that's manifesting itself in some behaviors and some things that are going on, right? Because that's the job. And so understanding the person's why is going to help you understand how to recognize when things are a little off. It's going to help you have the right conversations at the right time. And ideally, 90 days comes and goes and nothing changes for you.
Great point, David. And to follow up on that, one thing I have for managers is like we are seeing a lot of changes in the industries. The middle management layer is getting smaller and smaller. That doesn't mean we are going to not having managers in the future. But like many other jobs, if you find out your skill sets with AI, find out how you can use the tool to accomplish what Jonathan and David just said, you will fall behind. Like all the other top performers, managers have top performing managers and low performing managers. And if we don't start learning new skill sets and managing more people, you probably have seen the span of control have been going from 3, 4 to 12, 13, and it's gonna increase more and more very soon. So if you don't find a way to manage more people but not losing those signals, then we have a problem. So start looking at those, figure out how you can improve reading the room, analyzing those data and act on them and use the right tool to do that for giving you that output. Never go and like try like 200 tools. Just try to look out for like here are the things that I want to accomplish. I talk with these many people who train me. These are the things that I want to see and go find out how you can build up a tool now with all these agentic tools that you can overnight build an app or try to find other things. I've seen this engineering manager who literally actually built up an agent that goes to Git, bring him some points so that he can reach out to each individual and give them a point on their code. Like tell them how to get better in like building up their code. Before it was like a disaster to have one person doing all that. Now they can do it really quickly with use of AI and it's not even like costing them a lot of money. So those are great points. Thank you very much, Jonathan and David. And now I want to open it up for some like open discussions, any questions anyone have, and I'd love to answer those with the help of Jonathan and David.
Okay.
Uh, Sorry, I think we are not hearing. Is there anybody trying to ask a question? Okay. Any final thoughts? Jonathan, David, I think you hit it on the nail with your points.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been, I've enjoyed, but I don't know if anyone else has had a good time through this, but I've really enjoyed this conversation. And so, Ali Reza, I just want to thank you for, yeah, for having me here and having this conversation.
And then while we are
Likewise,
with
it's
you,
been
sorry, Jonathan, David, like we give this a specific time. If you are doing something that people might be interested and they want to reach out to you, how to reach out to you, and feel free to put your LinkedIn here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love to stick my nose in where it may or may not belong. So, anything that and I love having these conversations, answering questions. If anyone's looking for, any help, any guidance, thoughts on management, how to equip some of these things, how to kind of put some of this stuff into place. Um, I'm always happy to have that conversation, whether it's performance, whether it's general HR stuff, whether it's coaching. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one with my name. So reach out.
Awesome. Jonathan,
no, and a fantastic conversation. I greatly enjoyed the time. Thank you for those that joined us live. I know we'll have some people that join us after the fact. But again, I think the biggest takeaway is AI can do a lot of things, and it can make you a better manager in terms of understanding the breadth and depth of things in front of you. But it cannot replace the human factor and the relationships that you can build. So leverage AI, leverage the tools you have, but don't ever see it as a replacement for the connection you need to build with people and the human element of business, right? I put my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to connect with me. Always happy to connect and engage on any topic related to this. Love talking about HR and all things business. But thank you all for joining. Thank you, Ali Reza, for having me, and for David, the great conversation today.
thank you very much, Jonathan and David. And of course, like you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And I will do like a coaching session, 30 to 45 minutes. If you need any help, I can do that for free. And like, I just love to get the experience of different people because what I found is, of course, my job is very related using AI in HR and management. But at the same time, I love to see different people, how they implement and how to do them. And in the meanwhile, I can use my expertise to help making decisions because there is so much noise out there. So feel free to reach out to me, and I love to jump on a call and do a quick conversation about that. So that said, thank you everyone. I'll hopefully see you in the next webinars. We try to do this once every month, and then looking forward to see you soon.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.